President Ruto is having a hard time in Kenya. Kenyans, man, I swear, you guys are giving that man a hard time. Mr. Ruto will never forget these days in his life. Power to the people, no respect to Kenyans.
If you haven't watched news lately, especially news coming from Africa, Kenyan youth, Gen Zs, have made a bold statement, demonstrated against the sitting government. They have died in the process. The violence that has engulfed the nation since that time has hit global headlines. And there is major shakeup within the African continent. Politicians from across Africa, governments from across Africa are rattled. They are afraid that what has happened in Kenya is likely to affect their own nation states.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Deputy Minister for Information, I thought for what we have seen on CNN and everything, on what he saw in Kenya, where Kenyan public are beating up members of parliament for passing bad laws.
These kids out here, they know everything. They know your houses. They know where your kids go to school. They know which properties of land you have. Why must somebody have 4 million acres of land to his name? You hear money is being stolen by none other than the elite and the political class.
Unity, Mr. Speaker, has been violently gunned down in the streets, not by men, but by monsters who have no concern for human life. Although this government has demonstrated that lifeless Kenyan bodies are not to take precedence over their punitive finance bill, young Kenyans have looked their oppressor dead in the eye and shown them that when it comes down to the wire, there are only 2 times to be brave: when you feel like it and when you don't.
I think the most important thing to note about what is happening in Kenya is the fact that the Gen Z represent a demographic that is not politically affiliated, not tribally affiliated. And that is part of the reason that they are so difficult to fight. They are so difficult to stop. And African governments are likely going to be struggling with this for months on end and in the next few years. President Ruto, for example, may find it very difficult to survive up to the next election, which is due in 2027.
My profound disappointment with the current government and its forceful assault on crowds of innocent youth, Speaker, by its nefarious police officers who have gone rogue on unarmed young citizens peacefully exercising their constitutional right towards an uncaring, a corrupt, and wasteful government in their eyes that has turned its back on them cannot be emphasized enough, Speaker. The brute force used against young, unarmed protesters reveals the operating system built into the fabric of today's government.
Come speak to us.
And when they kill us, Speaker, they're killing themselves. You call us wankers and clueless children of plunderers. Then you say you're proud of us for making our voices heard peacefully. Then abduct defenseless children using state machinery and escalate a peaceful demonstration of young people with phones, twigs, and water bottles in their hands into barbaric scenes of bloodshed.
These people are tired. I was crying this morning today because we are messing up a good thing. We are messing up this country. Who wants to be a refugee? And there's enough for you people to eat, so long as you eat with manners. The revenue we collect is enough to run 8 African countries: Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania. You go to Congo, you go to South Sudan, you go to Somalia, and you go to Ethiopia. That's what our goddamn budget is. Just manage it, don't steal it. A few people are stealing too much. These kids out here, they know everything. They know your houses. They know where your kids go to school. They know which properties of land you have. Why must somebody have 4 million acres of land to his name? What happened to our mentality? Then we pretend and run to churches talking about Christianity, how Jesus... Do you understand what you are dealing with? The people out here don't even believe in God anymore. The people out here are tired of the lies, the religious organizations. And I have to say this, I'm a Catholic. I was so happy I saw the Papa Nuncio talk about the issues of a country. Let us forget that we can run this country as tribes. Let us accept that there is a new sheriff in town. That sheriff is the GNZ. They are partyless, they are tribeless, they don't have money, they just have bundles and a phone. And they'll stop this country to move.
Africa's biggest problem is corruption. That the ruling elite picked up on scripts of divide and rule that was largely used by the imperialists to control African states, to control African countries. And the idea to muzzle the populations has gone on for far too long. The best example is the elimination of Patrice Lumumba in Congo that largely involved Western powers. And that elimination ensured that a puppet called Mobutu retained his power within Congo for over 3 decades. And Congo has been exploited, Congo has been abused, Congo has been robbed of its natural resources, and to date, Congo is still being robbed. Why the population of Congo remain in abject poverty? These are the things that African youths are fighting for. To be able to exploit their own resources, to be able to manage their own affairs according to their own terms. The heavy borrowing by African nations, especially from the Bretton Woods institutions, have ensured that we have engaged in a cycle of poverty, borrowing at an expensive cost, while African nations continue to pay heftily. And this informs part of the reason that taxation in a country such as Kenya is so high to finance foreign debt. But over and above that, African nations, Kenya included, have exploited their populations and failed to provide basic services, to provide good education, to provide healthcare. So young Kenyans are saying that you cannot continue with the same games that you're playing, with the same antics. These are the challenges that we're experiencing on the continent. And the GenZ revolution in Kenya will definitely have impact across countries in Africa. Nigeria has a population of over 250 million citizens. That is huge. Kenya is just slightly above 50 million. But the courage that these young men have shown against brutal police force has emboldened Africans across the continent to push for change, regime change, to say that we cannot keep waiting all this time to take charge of our nation when those in authority, the older generation, are messing up the countries and messing up the continent. I believe African diaspora, black diaspora, whether you're in Europe or whether you're in Britain, can relate to some of these things, because the oppression within Africa is very much intertwined with the oppression of African populations across the world. That oppression also ties very well with the lending character of the organizations that have been lending to Africa. Lending at exorbitant rates, shackling countries with structural adjustment programs, SAPs, that meant the selling of parastatals, the selling of government institutions. Some of these institutions are being sold for a song at a throwaway price, oftentimes again bought by the kleptocrats of Africa for their own benefit. So at any rate, every time, they are looking out for their interests. African youth are saying, enough is enough. Down with you. So whatever happens, change must happen in Africa. Change will have to happen in Africa.
I concede.
Kenyans have started it. Nigerians are taking heed. It is bound to spread across Africa.
To advise us as to how to pass good laws to avoid being beaten by the public.
This change will push African leadership, and already you can see in places like Ghana, they are already so worried. We have got to be Afrocentric. We have got to look out for our own interests. Young Kenyans, young Africans. It is time to make that change. I must applaud the young Kenyans who've gone to the streets at great risk to life and limb and made their voices heard. It is time for change in Africa. It is time for change in Kenya. Many thanks for watching. This is Afrocentric. Do like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you at the next video. I'm out.